on, guys? Joe with OMGRC. So today I have the TERREMOTO-10. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and figure out what happened to this RC vehicle. If you saw my previous video, you do know that as far as it was broken at the very end, and that was the end of that run. It was on a 3S run anyway, but the front had no problems at all. I think the main culprit was going to be the rocks that got into the rear tires, jammed it up, and then broke that rear differential. And also, because this doesn't have a slipper clutch in it, meaning in the center there where you have the pads that are going to allow it to kind of turn a little bit, depending on how tight. Well, anyway, this one doesn't have one, so there's no adjustments on it. The only thing that these things will do is just turn in opposite directions, the unlock differentials. So, I did some modifications. If you noticed, well, let's go back to the front. The bumper, I went ahead and just on the back side, I removed these. These are easy, these little fake light buckets, and then this little grill part of it. I went ahead and just cut all that stuff off of there on the rear. And I actually modified the rear of the vehicle as well, cutting out more here. But in doing so, it made it bow because, well, there was more integrity in it. So normally, it's hard to kind of see it, but you can see how it's bowed there now. So I might put something in there, maybe some tape or something, and make it rigid again so it sits like this. Because the problem's going to happen, you try to eliminate one thing and then something else comes out on the body that it's going to still, if I get the body top back on there, what will happen is it's still going to want to grab on there a little bit if you bump into something. So if I do it that way, it's definitely going to allow a little bit more play in that bumper without hopefully affecting the body itself. That's something I'll do. I'll mess with a little bit more. I did raise up the body post a little bit, at least on the front, just to give a little bit more clearance. I might even get rid of this one here too and just chop it off because it kind of clips, it gets in the way still with the body, and that's going to cause problems too if you're jumping and smashing. That body. Anyway, so you guys know what I'm talking about here. So it still wants to it could still grab on there. It's going to want to push that body in a little bit. I don't know. I might keep it, may not. You guys can let me know, like, keep it, don't keep it, whatever. We'll see how that all works out. But yeah, the rear. So anyway, what I'm going to do is just go ahead. I'm going to do just a time lapse on this so you guys can just kind of see. I'm going to tear apart because there's a lot of screws, it seems like, and this is the first time I've actually dug into it when it comes to tearing apart this rear differential, because actually yesterday was my first day actually running it, and of course then it broke. And I don't say it's really the car's fault too much, other than this debris got in there. I'm going to say really just freak problem on that one. Don't think it's going to be expensive, but I can definitely tell it's going to be time consuming as far as to get into, because I can see there's a lot of screws to this thing. You got 4 screws that are here. The way how it's in there with the chassis, this differential, how it comes up. Anyway, there's a lot to it. Seems like an actually made a little strap for this too, which it seems I'm gonna have to kind of pull that up too, so I can get to those screws. So yay on that part of it. So anyway, you guys can always leave comments below and let me know, like, hey man, you did way too much based on what I could see in your time lapse. But I don't see too many options when it comes to an easy way to get this out without taking a bunch of screws off. I'll probably just remove this whole cluster, the shocks and all that kind of stuff. I'll try to keep it as much together as possible. So we'll see in the time lapse, see how that all kind of works out. But anyway, let's get started. No more rambling. All right, I figured I'd stop about halfway through just to kind of give you guys a heads up, that it's like, oh, it's all a blur real quick. But anyway, not a lot of screws to take it off just to get to where I'm at right now. There are, on top here, we're going to say 7 screws because you got 3 here, 3 here, and then you got 1 in the center. Once you take that one off in the center here, on the top, that's what mounts onto the chassis, pretty much these shocks they come off. So not a lot of that's holding the shocks on, which is kind of surprising, to be honest with you, but that's the way they have it. So I don't see too much more I have to do on this rig. It's just this plate here, and it's basically once I take that plate off there, more than likely this is going to separate pretty quick. I can see there's there's some gunk up in there. I can see stuff falling out of it already. So I'm wondering if maybe some kind of rock got in there. So I'm going to try to keep that close so I can maybe investigate how much junk got in there. Well, I'm kind of looking at it before I tear it completely apart. Now it's still turning like it was. It's, well, hard to say. Yeah, it's not turning like, nope, it's still really tough to turn. Not, right. But this is kind of like an outer shell that's on here right now. As I'm tearing this apart. So there goes that part of it. Lots of debris that was just stuck in there too. So we're gonna find out. But because that was in there like it was, let's see. Yeah, pretty messed up. All right, so I'm gonna need to tear this stuff off here again. Really only need like one Allen screw, or as far as one of these Allens to tear it all apart. So that's kind of nice on that. I'm not digging for a bunch of other little pieces, other tools or anything like that. So definitely nice. So I'm gonna go ahead and time lapse this part as well, because there's 4 screws and I don't have a power tool. So all right, guys, unfortunately I had it on slow motion when I was taking apart this differential for the rear. So anyway, I took a picture of the little cup here that housed these little gears in it. But really, the issue is it's not major, but what had happened is this little pin, I'm using this as a reference. This is not the pin that was in there. The other pin that was in there, well, here's a part of it. Anyway, the little pin, it broke into 3 pieces. And I think some of you guys chimed in about there's the weak link. Well, I found it. And that's what it was. So the pin. Anyway, that pin damaged this little gear here that goes in on the inside. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. So this is the little gear. Picture this little gear, this setup inside this cup anyway. And that's where it broke that pin. I'm gonna guess that somehow the rocks, they got jammed in there, and it also, well, because it doesn't have a center differential in the truck, it's turning all these wheels, and yeah, they can counter going, because the rear and the front and rear are unlocked, they can spin opposite or whatever. But the center, if both wheels in the rear lock up, there's nowhere for that power to go, because, well, everything's locked up. It can't transfer because that center differential is just a spool. It's just a piece, let's say a metal piece that's in there, not allowing it to slip like some of the other vehicles have in it. It is an upgrade, and I'm going to do that upgrade. It's not a lot. It's under 30 bucks. I don't know if it's even 20 bucks or something like that, but it'll allow it to slip. Now, given when that happens is that now the challenge is going to be like, oh, now the power is going to want to go to the front and it's not as much to the rear, but you can thicken that up with some oils. Some of them have like a tensioner that's on there, so it doesn't allow that slippage as much. Some of them are different. Anyway, I think this one's probably going to just be something like this same gear, and you put the thicker gear in, or thicker oil or grease in there, allowing it to slow that rotation down, but still allowing some slip. Anyway, got to replace this gear. And I just have some options. I want to ask you guys, because someone was mentioning about the landslide in the center or the rear differential, and I don't know if it's any different, but it has that housing, and I'm assuming it's probably something similar to the same little housing gearbox. And if it's any beefier, if it's not any beefier, then I'll just go ahead and replace this and do that center differential, and that would be pretty much the end of that. We're probably looking, let's say all in all, it might be like, I don't know, 40 bucks or less, probably, to do it all, because I'm sure it's a lot cheaper. Anyway, then they had like the suggested retail price. Anyway, I was kind of just glanced at, because they have different options with these little gears and stuff like that. It was like 12 bucks retail for like the little gears, and then you don't get a pin or anything like that. That was kind of silly. Or you get the whole gearbox, and it was like 18 bucks suggested retail or something like that. So what I'll end up doing is just either doing the whole gearbox, but if there's a better gearbox that'll fit properly, then I might go with that. If you guys had some suggestions on that, if it's a landslide or what have you. I don't know what else is entailed when it comes to that upgrade of that differential. If it's just identical, then there's no point in doing it. But I want to eliminate this little weak link that's here, but of course eliminating that could cause some other problems, but the fix would be the center differential is going to definitely going to help. So anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. I'm just going to reassemble it. I'm just going to shave this pin down just a little bit on the grinder and then just put it back together for the time being, so that way I don't lose any of the screws, and just make up my mind what I want to do as far as if I want to go with a beefier setup if possible, or you know, just replace the whole rear diff altogether. I don't know how much comes with it, but yeah, that should be that. All right, I just put it all back together. Let you know, I just shaved down that little pin that I had, put it back in there, and it all works. Everything seems to be okay. I did grease it up a little bit, and that's that. So I don't know how long it's going to last, but at least I can put it on the shelf, wait for those other parts to come in, or any suggestions that do come in. Anyway, appreciate you guys always watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Anyway, till next time, this is Joe with OMGRC. You guys take care. Later.